You are driving your life every single day without fully knowing how the car works. And the unsettling part is this. Most of us don't even realize we're driving blind. We press the accelerator when we mean to slow down, we slam the brakes when we should be moving forward. And sometimes, without meaning to, we crash into the very people we love. We think life is difficult because the road is hard. But what if the real problem is that we never learned how to drive? If you've ever reacted in a way you later regretted, if you've ever hurt someone you deeply care about and wondered, why did I do that? If you've ever felt stuck in the same patterns, same arguments, same mistakes, same emotional loops, then you've already felt this. Maybe you've noticed that no matter how much you try to do better, something pulls you back into the same behaviors. You probably think it's lack of discipline, or bad habits, or maybe even that something is wrong with you. But by the end of this journey, you will begin to see something different. You will understand that the quality of your life is not determined by how hard you try, but by how clearly you see. You will begin to understand why self-awareness is not a luxury. It is the steering wheel, the brakes, the entire control system of your life. And you may also begin to see why so much of what you carry, your patterns, your reactions, your wounds, was never truly chosen by you. And strangely, instead of feeling trapped by that realization, you may feel lighter, less burdened, less alone, because maybe life is not about building the perfect car. Maybe it is about learning how to drive the one you were given. Think about it this way. Imagine being handed a car at the beginning of your life. You didn't choose the model. You didn't design the engine. You didn't install the brakes. It was simply given to you. Some people receive a car that runs smoothly, with responsive controls and clear visibility. Others receive something more complicated, an engine that overheats, brakes that are too sensitive, a steering wheel that pulls slightly to one side. Now imagine you are expected to drive this car without any instruction. No one explains how the gears work. No one tells you when the oil needs to be changed. No one shows you what happens if you ignore the warning lights. You just start driving. And at first, you might get by. You learn through trial and error. You accelerate when you should slow down. You hesitate when you should move forward. You make small mistakes, then bigger ones. Maybe you crash. Maybe you hurt someone. Maybe you hurt yourself. And then comes the part that most of us know too well. You blame yourself. You say, I'm a bad driver. But what if that's not the full story? What if you were never taught how to understand the car? What if the problem is not that you are broken, but that you are unaware? Self-awareness is simply this: understanding the car you're driving, knowing how your emotions work, knowing your triggers, knowing the patterns that repeat, knowing when your engine is overheating, knowing when your brakes are failing, knowing when you're about to take a turn that leads to the same place you promised yourself you would never go again. Without this awareness, life becomes reactive. You don't choose your responses, you fall into them. You don't build relationships, you collide into them. You don't create your life, you drift through it. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Arjun. Arjun is successful. Good job, stable life, respected by others. But his relationships always seem to fall apart in the same way. In the beginning, everything is intense, exciting, full of connection. But over time, he becomes distant, withdrawn, hard to reach, and eventually his partner feels alone and leaves. And every time, Arjun says the same thing. I don't know what happened, but if you look closely, something is happening. Arjun grew up in a household where emotions were not welcomed, where vulnerability was seen as weakness, where the safest thing to do was to stay composed, controlled, distant. That became his driving pattern. So when intimacy deepens, when a partner begins to get closer, his internal system interprets it as danger, not consciously, but automatically. And so he pulls away, not because he doesn't care, but because his car is wired to protect him in that way. Without self-awareness, he believes, this is just who I am. With awareness, he begins to see, this is how I learned to survive. And that changes everything. Because once you see it, you are no longer completely controlled by it. You still feel the pull, the urge to withdraw. But now there is a moment, a small gap, where you can choose differently, not perfectly, not instantly, but gradually. This is what self-awareness gives you, not control over everything, but awareness of what is happening. And awareness creates possibility. Now let's take another example. A mother, exhausted after a long day, snaps at her child for something small. The child looks hurt. The mother immediately feels guilt. Why did I do that? She asks herself. But what if we look deeper? Maybe she grew up in an environment where stress was expressed through anger, where emotional regulation was never modelled. So now, under pressure, her system defaults to what it knows. Again, this is not about blame. It is about understanding the car. Because if she continues to believe, I am just an impatient person, nothing changes. But if she begins to see, this is a pattern I inherited, something opens. She can pause. She can repair. She can begin to respond differently. And in doing so, she is not just changing her own life, she is changing the experience of her child. This is how patterns move through generations, not through intention, but through unconscious repetition. We inherit more than just our genetics. We inherit emotional patterns, beliefs, reactions, ways of relating. It's as if we are handed not just a car, but also the driving habits of those who came before us. And unless we become aware, we continue driving the same way, turning where they turned, crashing where they crashed, hurting where they hurt. This is what people mean when they talk about intergenerational trauma. But you don't need the term to understand the experience. You felt it in your reactions, in your fears, in the way certain situations trigger something deeper than the moment itself. And here is where something else enters the conversation. Determinism. The idea that everything, your thoughts, your reactions, your life path, is shaped by causes that came before you. At first, this idea can feel heavy, because it seems to remove choice. It seems to say, you are not in control. But look at it differently. If everything that shaped you was not chosen by you, then why carry so much guilt? Why carry so much blame? Why hold yourself responsible for patterns that were built long before you were aware? This doesn't mean you are powerless. It means you are not alone in your conditioning. Even the people who hurt you, even the ones who threw stones at your car, they too were shaped by forces they did not fully choose. They were driving their own inherited vehicles, with their own blind spots, their own limitations. This doesn't justify harm, but it changes how you carry it. It softens the weight. Because instead of seeing a world full of intentional damage, you begin to see a world full of unconscious drivers, people doing the best they can, with the awareness they have. And this is where something unexpected happens. Compassion, not forced, not moral, but natural. Because when you understand your own patterns, it becomes easier to understand others. When you see your own blind spots, it becomes harder to judge theirs. And when you realize how much of life is shaped by forces beyond conscious choice, the need to blame begins to dissolve. You still take responsibility, but without the heaviness, without the self-punishment, without the constant narrative of, "I should have been different." Instead, you begin to ask a different question. What is happening in me right now? Not what's wrong with me, but what is happening? And that question changes the direction of your life, because it brings you back to awareness, back to the present, back to the driver's seat, not as someone who controls everything, but as someone who sees more clearly. And seeing clearly is everything, because once you see the pattern, you cannot fully unsee it. Once you recognize the reaction, you cannot fully be unconscious of it again. And slowly, over time, the way you drive begins to change. Not through force, but through understanding. You brake a little earlier. You accelerate a little more intentionally. You notice when the engine is overheating. You take care of the car, not because you were told to, but because you understand it. And this changes the quality of your life. Your relationships become less reactive. Your work becomes less stressful. Your inner world becomes less chaotic. Not perfect, but more aware, more spacious, more humane. And somewhere along the way, something else emerges. Gratitude. Not because everything is ideal, but because you begin to see how much of your life simply unfolded. You didn't choose everything, but you experienced it. You learned from it. You became aware through it. And even that awareness came when it came. So maybe the goal is not to control every turn of the road. Maybe it is to drive with awareness, to take care of the vehicle you've been given, to understand its strengths and its limitations, and to be gentle with yourself and with others, knowing that we are all navigating this journey with imperfect maps. So, as you move through your day, pause. Notice your reactions. Notice your patterns, not to fix them immediately, but to see them. Because seeing is the beginning of change. And maybe, just maybe, the quality of your life has never been about how fast you drive, but about how clearly you understand the one who is driving. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to others. We are all on the same road, driving different cars, learning slowly how to see. Thank you for watching this video. Please comment, share and subscribe for more.